saint died, well, the church can say, well, oh, yeah, your mom, poor thing, she's in hell, but if you will pay us X amount of money, we can move her into purgatory. And then they'll go south. Oh, the whistle Dixie. Or you pay us a little bit more and keep the payments coming, we can move her out of purgatory and find her a permanent home in heaven. So they manipulate the word in order to keep people under control, and they use it as a tool of oppression. So the idea that we can formulate here is that those who seek to judge, live and act in accordance to the Torah, are oppressed through the manipulation of the word of Yahuwah by those who are inflamed by their desire to do what is not good. And this is further illustrated in the phrase, all their kings have fallen. So the word for fallen in this particular case is nafalu, that aside from to fall means to make a lie. So this concept of making a lie follows us all the way through the Torah, the prophets, the writings, Brit Hadashah, all the way into Revelation, where 22:15 says that outside the gates are these manipulators and those who make and love a lie. So now the word for their kings is malachem, that also represents authority. So we can consider from this phrase is that the authority of those who are inflamed with a desire to do what is not good is based on a lie. When the Torah of Yahuwah is ignored or manipulated, it's a lie. This is what is used to oppress those who seek to live and act according to the Torah of Yahuwah. Because of this, the final phrase of this verse holds true. There is none among them that calls to me. The house of Israel refused to call on Yahuwah. They substituted the title of Baal, that simply means Lord or Master. And today, the resurgence of the name of Yahuwah is met with hostility. So this helical cycle continues. Israel began to call on, or the house of Israel began to call on Baal. After the rebellion of Bar Kokhba, the name of Yahuwah was stricken from the lips, from all of the liturgy of Judaism, and replaced with Adonai, that means Lord. Or later on became Hashem, that means the name. So this helical action continues to take place. The result of that particular thing is that it removed it from the mouths of Christians as well. So now we have other names that are there that distort the meaning of the scripture in it of itself. Because when we use the name of Yahuwah or Yahusha or even Mashiach, we use it as the word inside of the verse, and it actually enhances the meaning of the verse substantially. For example, our Father in the Shamayim, Kodesh is your name. So we know his name to be Yahuwah. So what am I saying? Our Father in the Shamayim, in everything, you are dedicated, Kodesh, to me in every aspect of my life at every time of my life, because we understand that the name represents everything there is at every time. So it expands our ability to understand the magnitude of our relationship with our Elohim. So let's continue. Verse 8. Ephraim, he mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim has become a cake not turned. Okay, so you have one side of something. But Ephraim means to be fruitful. We consider this word for peoples, aside from being a group of peoples, we know that Ephraim was mixed into the peoples in the northern kingdom, and they were amongst the Gentiles. But if we consider the peoples to be Amim, from the root Am, that means people, from the root of Amam, that means a darker dim, and the root letter is the ayin. So we have this idea in people of a dark or dim perception. Your fruitfulness has entered into or comes from a dark or dim perception. So the Cliff Notes version of this verse is that fruitfulness is based on a dark or dim perception. This false idea of fruitfulness is one-sided. We can consider the idea of perception being on the backside of the shin, which represents the carnal perception that has yielded itself to the enticements of the Satan. If everything's going good and you are living in a falsehood, everything will continue to go good because the enticements are going to be continued to be fed to you. When you discover truth and you begin to make teshuvah, the Satan draws back, and all of a sudden you come into all this hardship, and you're saying to yourself, "Wait a minute, is this the truth?" So it's something that brings up doubt. It's kind of a guerrilla war tactic that the adversary has. So, verse 9, strangers have devoured his strength, and he knows it not. Yes, gray hairs are here and there upon him, and he knows it not. They didn't have mirrors back then, so that's cool. The word for strangers in this verse is zurim, that can also mean a strange woman or a harlot, a prostitute. So if we consider woman to represent the spiritual side of the Adam, then we can consider the harlot to represent a spirit of idolatry. It is a spirit of idolatry that has devoured the strength of Ephraim. Idolatry consumes the fruits of the Spirit. The word for strength is koho, that refers to vitality, wealth, vigor, and the capacity to be productive. So what is devoured or consumed is the ability to grow, and this stoppage is caused by spiritual harlotry or idolatry. We may have the perception that everything's going great because we have all the physical things that we need. But our relationship with Seh HaElohim is not something that we can see. And that may be straying off, but I have all this great stuff, so I'm distracted from the fact that something in my ability to worship in spirit and in truth is not exactly where it should be. So from the phrase, "and he knows it not," we can consider that having forgotten what it is to worship in spirit and in truth, the one that is inflamed with a desire to do what is not good and continue in a state of spiritual harlotry is unaware that he is in idolatry. This one calls evil good and good evil, which is a sin against the Ruach of Yahweh that will not be forgiven if it's not turned around. And Yahusha said this is, King Jimmy, the unpardonable sin. It's a terrible thing, but we call good evil and we call evil good. It's because we've taken, like we talked about a few weeks ago, we've taken those 10 commandments and we've turned them around. And we're starting with the 10th commandment as the first one, that I covet, I have greed, I want, which leads me to bear false witness, to steal, into adultery, which is getting involved with the wrong people. Then it leads me to begin to be hurtful to people, leads me to not respect life, not to rest and take time with my Elohim. By the time I get to the end of it, Yahuwah is the last thing on my mind. My carnal side is the only thing that's important. But I have a form of reverence, but I deny the power of it. Okay? So we have to be able to make teshuvah and turn that shin back around and acknowledge evil as evil and good as good. So he has grown stale by residing in darkness and does not know to move away from it, or is afraid to move away from it due to the persecution from the controversy. People will remain festering in darkness because they are afraid of what others will say. When a second Passover was offered the majority of the northern kingdom of Israel refused to attend out of loyalty to the king. So, Hezekiah, has this second Passover, the one that's celebrated in the second month, and everyone's invited, including the northern kingdom. And some from the northern kingdom come, but for the most part they don't come, including the king. And they don't come because they're loyal to the king and they're not going to break what the king has to say. So we see this idea that sometimes, regardless of what doors are open for us to make changes and come back to our Elohim, we simply won't take them out of loyalty to someone or something. So people will remain festering in darkness because they are afraid of what others will say. Again, when a second Passover was offered, the majority of the northern kingdom of Israel refused to attend out of loyalty to the king. So in the phrase, gray hairs are here and there upon him, and he knows it not, we can consider an ignorance or an unawareness of spiritual death that is looming. We don't have to die physically in order to die spiritually, but the time to make teshuvah and repair one's relationship with Yahuwah their Elohim is while they are living. When life ends, judgment begins, and then it's too late to make amends. We have this life. We've been given this life. We were created to be in fellowship with Yahuwah Elohim. Does it make sense that we want to use the life while we're alive, breathing, to make that relationship? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, when I die I'm going to heaven and it's going to be so sweet. Why are you wanting to wait that long? Have your relationship with your Elohim now. Live within him now. So, verse 10, and the pride of Israel testifies to his face, but they have not returned to Yahuwah their Elohim, nor have they sought him for all this. So, it is pride that keeps one continuing to wrestle against Elohim. To wrestle against Elohim is one of the meanings of Yisrael. Pride keeps one in a state of wrestling with Elohim. This results in one continuing to be separated from Yahuwah their Elohim, and out of the ignorance of their self-directed dogma, they do not seek him. In the phrase for all this, we can consider that their dogma is what keeps them in a false comfort that they are in the will of God. We've talked about the heart. One thing that I hear often is, well, God knows my heart. I said, yes, he does. You go back and you read, Yahuwah says that the heart of humankind is evil from his youth, and every inclination of his thought is wickedness. So, what do I want to do with that heart? Anyway, verse 11, and Ephraim has become like a silly dove, without understanding. They call unto Egypt, they go to Assyria. So the house of Israel sought to make an arrangement with Egypt to offer them protection against Assyria. Egypt betrayed them, and Israel became a poor subordinate vassal of the Assyrian Empire. Now, this is prior to being taken away in captivity, but there was a whole lot of stuff going on as far as making covenants with people and making agreements with people. And Israel, both Yehuda and Israel, were weakened after the split. So we have to make allies. So I'm going to make allies with Egypt, the people that kept me in slavery for so long, to protect me from this, basically what amounts to, yes, it's a strong kingdom, but it's not that strong yet. So they make this arrangement. Egypt betrayed them, and Israel became a poor subordinate vassal of the Assyrian Empire. The dove represents the spirit, and the false spirit, the silly dove, of those engaged in spiritual idolatry, are betrayed by it, and it leads them into deeper spiritual poverty. What happened? They became a poor vassal state, and then they were taken into captivity and it didn't get much better because shortly after that they were taken into captivity again. So this comes from a lack of true understanding of the word of Yahuwah. But hope is offered in the right context of the next verse. Because when we read this verse out of King Jimmy, or any of our English-based Bibles, there is no hope. If we were reading this out of King James, it would say, even as they go, I will spread my net upon them. I will bring them down as the fowls of the heaven. I will punish them as their congregation has been made to hear. I will punish them. We read about punishment a lot. So we think, oh, well, this wrathful God of the Old Testament is a punishing God. This was the mentality of the church as it was growing, but we have this God in the New Testament who is a loving God. And so let's consider this from the right context. We say, even as they go, I will spread my net upon them. I will bring them down as the fowls of the heaven. I will discipline them as their congregation has been made to hear. So even the word discipline may be a little bit tough. But we got this idea that Yahuwah is always present and is always ready to receive us back when we go astray. And the word used for discipline here is iserem, which is often mistranslated as punish, but this word, aside from discipline, also means to teach. So let's consider the phrase, as their congregation has been made to hear, first, and then we'll come back to this word for teach. The verse for as their congregation has been made to hear is kishema le'adatem, that should read, as their congregation moves towards perceiving, discerning, and understanding. So with this translation in mind, let's bring in this idea of teaching back into the mix. We can formulate an overall idea from this verse that says, I, Yahuwah, am always present and ready to bring you back when this congregation of people are able to perceive, discern, and understand and moves towards me, because we have this thing here in this word for congregation or assembly, edat, that we have a lamed in front of it that means in the direction of. Okay, so when this congregation of people are able to perceive, discern, and understand and begins to move towards me, I will teach them. So humankind throughout the helical traditions, or throughout the history of time, has strayed from Yahuwah their Elohim and has formulated its own dogma and traditions. They have become stale and are festering in the darkness. In the process, the true worship of Yahuwah Elohim, of Yahuwah the Elohim of all humankind, has been erased from the memory of the Adam. As this worship begins to find its way back into the consciousness of humankind, it is meeting resistance from those inflamed with the desire to not do what is good. And, not that the Hebraic roots movement or the Messianic movement or any of that is all that great. But I've watched videos and read articles on this, the heresy of the Christian roots movement. We don't live in that Old Testament law anymore. We have grace. So even the going back and trying to live a Torah observant life is considered taboo by a lot of these groups. So there's a lot of resistance from those who are inflamed with this desire to not do what is good. The separation from Yahuwah due to this spiritual idolatry is large, and it will lead many to a permanent state of separation. Yahuwah is present and is waiting for those who will perceive, discern, and understand the truth of his word to move towards him and make teshuvah. It is then that Yahuwah Elohim will teach them and inscribe the words of his Torah onto their hearts. We read that throughout the prophets. I believe it's Jeremiah specifically, or is it Ezekiel? I will engrave the Torah into their hearts. Okay? people won't have to tell them that I'm Yahuwah because they will already know me. So Hosea was fighting a bad situation. Yisrael was not going to turn around. They were going to stay exactly what they were because they were too emotionally upset, too angry with the kingdom of the south, Yehuda. They were the baker. And the oven continued to stay hot. And there we go. It's pre-warmed. We could bake cookies in it now. So with that, we'll say grooviness has been achieved, and